Hello everyone, welcome back. So now we're going to start writing and defining our own functions. So the first function that I have here on the screen in the cell here in Spider is a function that does not require any arguments and it does not return anything. So inside the parentheses there is nothing in it, and at the end of the function there is no return. There is nothing to return. Nevertheless, the function does something for us. In this case, it's quite simple. It's going to print two statements. That's all. So you call this function and it prints those two statements. Not much use in this function, but there are times when you're going to be calling functions for them to do something, right? It may take defaults, and that's why you don't send any statements. I just want to show you the syntax in creating this function is most important. So the first thing I want to remind you, right? You have the def or def keyword. Then you have the function name following the def, right? You have the function name. Then you have parentheses, and the parentheses are required. Then after the parentheses, you have a colon. So those are all required in every function. The def, the name of the function, then the parentheses, and the colon. All of those are required in every function. Okay. Following the colon, like you did in the for loop or in the if, what comes after the colon is going to be code that is indented. So all this code that you see here is indented, right? When you run a tool like Spider, it will automatically indent it for you because it recognizes the colon to be followed by indentation. And everything that is indentation is part of the function. If it's not indented, like the code that follows right here, which is not indented, that code is not part of the function. So the function doesn't do much. Again, it just prints two statements. One other aspect in this function, it has this documentation within these three quotation marks. And it's a good practice to do this, because when you begin to do that, you will be able to use the help function when you're running this program, and the help function will display what you put in the documentation. Over here, the documentation is not much, right? Because there are no parameters and it returns nothing. If there were parameters and it returns something, you will explain it right here. And you will also explain what the function is for, what it does for you. When you run a function, before you use the function, you have to run the code that defines the function. So we're going to do that here in Spider, and we have a cell which is in a little bit of a grayish background as opposed to over here at the bottom. See, every time I click, you see the gray coming up. It's because I'm pointing to this cell. And Spider allows me to run the entire cell with this choice right here. Use run current cell. The other thing you can do with Spider is just select the text that you're going to, or the instructions you're going to run, and then just run selection or current line. I'm going to just run the cell. Before I run it, I want to point you to my variable explorer. I have it set up in such a way that it not only shows variables, but it also shows which functions have been defined. And right now, as you can see, this function, which is called args0_no_return, is not defined. It's not listed here. It's not listed here in the upper corner. It's not listed here. You don't see it. You don't see it. It's not there. Where is it? It's not there, right? It's not listed here. So we want to change that, because if it's not listed here, that means we cannot use it. The computer will not know what we're trying to do. So the first thing we're going to do then is we're going to run this function, and I'm going to run it with running cell. And as soon as I do that, on my variable explorer, you can see the function is there. And if I click on it, you can see the documentation on it, which is not much about this function. There's not much documentation. There's no parameters and there is nothing to return. You can see it right here. And so that's good. It's a nice feature from Spider. But you can see that it runs. So that is learned, that the computer knows about this function. It's been defined. So now we can run it. So I come to the next cell, and I'm going to run it. The name of the function again is args0 nor return. So I'm going to run this cell right here, right? And I just run it. Where is it? Where did it? Right. It only does the print statement. Oops. Oh, sorry. I ended up running everything. Let me run it one more time. My apologies. Run the cell. There you go. Here it is. So my apologies. I clicked the wrong thing. So anyway, I went back and I ran the cell, and the cell comes up and it does what I told it to do, which is typing some text. Her Majesty is a pretty nice girl, but she doesn't have a lot to say. That's what it says. That's what it does. That's all it does. In the next one, let's see, we are going to run this time another function, right? Let's make this smaller. Let's clear this text. All right. And this function is similar in the sense that it doesn't return anything, but there are two arguments. So I changed the name of my function. You can call your functions any name you want when you create them, as long as they don't conflict with a keyword from Python. This function is going to take two arguments, A and B. And it's not going to do much with them. It's going to print the value of the arguments, and it's going to return the type of the argument. So as we did before, I have a definition, I have the name of my function, I have my parenthesis, and this time I have two arguments, A and B, and I have my colon character right here, and then everything is indented, and that's what the function is going to do. I also have it documented, and so let's do this. Let's run it. So I point to the cell and I'm going to run the cell. So when it runs, the computer learns about it. You can see it that is in my variable explorer now. Now you can see a few more things. In fact, you can see the function right there. And if I run the function now that it learned it, I'm going to send two numbers to the function. There it is. 100 and 200 is ran, and it printed what it received. You can see it right here. Now let's run it again, but this time let's send two other variables, hello and also world. Let's send that. So there it is, hello world. Let's send two other variables. This time the type are Boolean variables, true and false. So it says two arguments are true and false, and they're Boolean. Let's send two more, string variable and a numeric variable. So it got hello and the number 125, and it sensed that it was a string and a integer. And I'm doing this to let you know that when a function receives parameters or arguments, the function will know what type, variable type those parameters are. And it's important because in my next example, right, I'm going to run these examples. I'm going to add two numbers. So if I add two numbers, whatever I send to the function better be numbers. If they are not numbers, then I will have a type error. And if I have an error, I'm going to have to handle that error. And we'll talk about error handling in another lesson. So here, I have another function that I say add two numbers, and I don't return anything, but it prints the result. So let's define it by running this entire cell. Now, if I look at my variable explorer, okay, you see add two numbers, no return is right here. Add two nums, no return. So my computer learned about it. Now I'm going to run this line 153, just that line. And I send 100 and 200, and it resulted in 300. It printed right there. I'm pointing to the console to make sure you don't miss it. I'm pointing right here. right? That's the console. I sent the 100 and the 200, and my result was 300, right? So let's clear this. Let's give you some more space. I'm going to run another one with 10 and 5. And you see, 10 plus 5 is 15. It printed it right there. Now, what if I need that 15 downstream? Well, in that case, I want to have a return. So in the next example, I add two numbers just the same as I did before. But this time, I'm going to return the result. So this is important right here. It wasn't required, but I may need it. So this return right here is making the function something that I can call, and then I can assign the result to another variable, as I'm going to do next. So, but before I do it, I have to teach my computer about this function, right? It's that function that doesn't know this function. So I'm going to run this cell. Now I see that my new function is here, add two numbers with return. It's right there, so it knows about it. Now I know it's registered in my computer. So I'm going to run the next line right here where I add two numbers, 10 and 4, and I assign the result to a variable named C. I can name it anything I want as long as it doesn't conflict with a keyword. So there it is. I ran it. So C is right here in my variable explorer. It has a value of 14. Well, I can print it as well so that it shows up in the console, because right now the console doesn't know anything about it. So I'm going to run it, just that line 176. It ran and it prints the value of the variable C, and the number is 14, right? So then I can do another example where I do 225 plus 25, okay, and that is 250. And okay, so that's it. I will stop recording right now, and I come back and show you another type of function that has defaulted values. So for now, I'll be right back. Take care. Bye-bye.